Greetings and salutations, everybody. Hot off the presses, it's the brand new edition of the Weekly Hero, first episode of 2019. The pages are crisp, the ink is barely dry, and I'm, of course, joined by Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, John. It's, you know, I think it's going to be a comic-filled year, a comic book, just a cornucopia of great comic book-related material. I'm excited.
It's actually stupid. I mean, no, it's actually stupid how much comic book material we are getting this year, both on television and in the movies. You know what's funny? I was last night I was watching some videos on YouTube over some technical gear, and one of the suggested videos that came up in my YouTube list was Kevin Smith responding and reacting to the Spider-Man trailer that dropped the other day.
Right.
And it just reminded me a lot of you because he was just, folks, we are living in wondrous times. And that's all I think when you think of 2019 now.
Right.
Like we have just started the new year and we are a heartbeat away from Avengers Endgame. We've got Captain Marvel coming. We had Spider-Man Far From Home coming. We've got a Shazam movie coming. We supposedly have 2 X-Men Universe movies coming. We had all this great stuff on television. It's going to be a great year with a lot of stuff to talk about.
I'm very, very excited. And you know, it's funny because people have famously pointed out 2019 is when the movie Blade Runner is set. And
right.
Blade Runner
doesn't look like it.
No, it's the ultimate.
It does not look like it anymore.
Blade Runner, the ultimate dystopian movie where civilization's beginning to fall apart. There's acid rain everywhere. The human beings are being replaced by replicants. And we're the exact opposite of that, at least as far as fans go. We're getting everything. Even a new Star Wars movie. Don't forget about that.
Oh yeah, that's coming too.
Unbelievable.
But speaking about some of the great comic book movies coming out in 2019, we got a few topics to start off here today, and we're going to lead off. First topic of 2019 for us is that next big comic book movie coming, and that, of course, is Captain Marvel. Now, we have talked a lot about Captain Marvel recently, of course. The first few trailers haven't really blown us away.
Right.
The most recent trailer, easily the best one they've done. Still not knocking it out of the park, though. I don't hear a lot of people like thinking that, hey, it's a good trailer, it's solid, but no one's really saying, oh my God,
right.
and like losing their minds like that second Infinity War trailer did. But guess what? There's a lot of people looking forward to seeing this movie. There are 2 big pieces of information that came out about Captain Marvel in this past week or so. Number one is the early ticket sales. Fandango and other outlets are reporting that Captain Marvel is the fastest selling ticket sales only behind 2 other films, 2 other Marvel films. Avengers Infinity War, no kidding, and Black Panther. Other than those 2, this movie's outselling a lot of pace. Now, there's a few asterisks you got to put beside that because, you know, more people buy tickets online now and all that kind of, but still a positive sign. However, Box Office Pro has come out and they've given their early projections on the opening weekend of Captain Marvel, and it is, quite frankly, Robert, stunning. Right now, Box Office Pro is projecting an opening weekend of $140 to $180 million. Like, I'll be honest with you. It's a Marvel movie. I knew people were going to go. I was not expecting that number of people go. And the recent trend for these big Marvel movies has been those early projections just usually end up going up. Now, they could go down.
Right.
But these early tracking sales, the Box Office Pro coming out and giving this as their projection, how do you respond? What's your thought on that when you hear this?
Well, you know, I think we online film pundits and fans, we're always sort of in our own little bubble because we only really talk to each other. You know, we're only talking to other fans. And when a trailer comes out, it's our extended community that talks amongst themselves about whether they were blown away or not.
Yeah.
And we so often forget that we, the geek film punditry community, is a small one, really.
Relatively speaking.
Relatively speaking. Compared to the rest of the world, I think that the awareness and the anticipation for Captain Marvel is much bigger than even we in our little community might think. I mean, say you're a mom, you know, and you've got an 8-year-old daughter. You had Wonder Woman come out a couple of years ago. Your 8-year-old daughter was 6, probably too young to see Wonder Woman. So you've been waiting to see a female-led superhero movie that you can take your daughter to, that you as a mother can enjoy it with your daughter. Certainly there's never been an MCU film with a headlining female character like Captain Marvel. And the anticipation for that is probably much bigger than in the general population than we could possibly imagine. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people, and those people, you know, who aren't looking for every trailer the minute it drops, they're not the people that are maybe as discerning about trailers. Like, they don't expect a trailer to blow them away. They expect the movie to blow them away. Right. You know, they're not looking at every trailer. So I think that there's a huge anticipation for this movie that we might not even be aware of in the general population, in the greater world at large. I think this movie's really important. I think it's really important to Marvel. I think it's really important to audiences, certainly to shareholders. But I think we're getting I think this film is going to be huge. And if it's good, if it's a great movie, the same way that Black Panther delivered and over-delivered, nobody knew how good it was going to be. If we might have that kind of a situation with Captain Marvel, it could be much bigger than we thought. But it really depends on the quality of the film.
So I remember, you know, with the early ticket sales things, these can be deceiving numbers. Again, I said there are a couple of asterisks you have to put that. Number one, every month, more and more people are using online ticketing than they were before, so that kind of skews numbers. But the other thing we got to keep in mind is this, is that remember Solo, a Star Wars story, and I hate calling it because the Star Wars story is so stupid. But anyway, Solo, which was a great movie. I loved that movie. But it had really big early ticket sales too. Yeah. Like bigger than some of the monster films. And that film ended up being, while making close to $400 million, was still a box office flop for them because it lost them a bunch of money. Right. Not as much as they could have lost, but it lost them a bunch of money for various reasons. That had big early ticket sales too. But we never saw tracking numbers like this. So let me ask you, we're seeing these ridiculous numbers, 140, 180. By the way, just to give some context, Black Panther opened at just a hair over 200 million. These numbers are not all that far off. Right. Do you actually think a Captain Marvel movie is going to open to $180 million opening weekend? You know, John, if you'd asked me this 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said no. I would have expected it to do Doctor Strange numbers at best. Right. You know, 600 total, 600 million, 650, maybe 700 total, and opening to respectable numbers, but certainly not. I mean, you're talking, there are very few films in the history of Hollywood that mustered $150 million opening weekend. Yeah, I mean, that's really not normal. But then again, the MCU, we're coming off of even movies that we thought we were dubious about. Venom. Yeah. We didn't know that Into the Spider-Verse was going to be as delightful as it was. Yeah. I mean, and Aquaman certainly shattering that billion-dollar glass ceiling. Which we'll get to in a bit. And it's just, I think that there's this anticipation that these movies are delivering great entertainment. You know, a great time at the films, a great time at the picture show, as it were. And I think that the anticipation now, or the expectation now, is that all comic book movies are going to deliver this kind of entertainment. And that's a pretty great place to be. It's a lot better than people going, nah, this is going to suck. Yeah. I would much rather be in a place where people are, because I'm excited about every Marvel movie that comes out. I'm excited to see Captain Marvel. I've loved Carol Danvers, as I've said so many times, since Avengers Annual 10. I know she was older than that, but Chris Claremont wrote that comic. Michael Golden drew it. It's one of my favorite comics of all time. And I am really excited for this movie, and I coming off, there's a palpable excitement, I think, for all comic book movies now, and it's great to be living, once again, like you just said, we're living in heady times, my friends. Who would have thought we'd be getting this much four-color fantasy awesomeness taken from the wet ink pages of a comic book and splattered across the big screen? It's pretty great. You raised a great point about the expectations, because you and I were having this conversation the other day. It's about, you know, earlier in my career, I used to unofficially see a part of my job was to convince movie fans to try the comic book genre. Right. Like, really, that was part of my job early in my career, whether it was with the movie blog, and even in the early days of my AMC days, I kind of saw it as an unofficial, unwritten part of my job to get movie fans to try out comic book movies. The last 5 or 6 years, that unofficial part of my job is totally flipped. Now I feel like part of my job is to convince comic book movie fans to try these other movies that aren't comic book movies, because some of them are awesome. But that kind of is representative of how this genre has evolved. And I think Captain Marvel and our expectations are an example of that, because there was a time not long ago, Robert, where you or I or anybody else could walk into a comic book movie, have the movie be really good, And we'd come out really pleasantly surprised because we never expected the movies to be great. We expected to have our geeky fun in it, but we never expected the movies to be great. But where are we today? Expectations have changed more and more. These movies aren't just goofy fun. They're putting in some quality filmmaking. Now we have an expectation, not just us, the geeks, but the general movie-going audience now has an expectation of something solid and good. So they're going to see these movies, and that has played out at the Academy Awards too. Last year, first time ever, comic book movie gets a Best Screenplay. One of the most important Academy Awards. Logan gets a Best Screenplay nomination. This year, deservedly or undeservedly so, Black Panther is going to get some Oscar buzz this year. And now we're getting this movie like Captain Marvel, and I love the way you phrase that. 3 years ago, no. But now it's like people automatically think comic book movie in the 80s and 90s, going to be cheesy and bad. Today, well, it must be something good. And it's not always something good.
Right.
But that's probably playing into it. And I still don't believe Captain Marvel will make 180 million opening weekend. Well, I still don't believe it. But oh my God, it would be amazing if it did.
But you know what I think people are forgetting too? When you think about like these characters that are they're derived from comic book properties.
Yes.
But they're not just doing that. We're getting Infinity War wasn't just a movie about superheroes. It was a science fiction epic.
Yeah.
It was a fantasy epic. I mean, it's all of these genres rolled into one under this umbrella of comic book films. But I mean, the Kree-Skrull War, even though it was from Marvel comic books, it's still an awesome science fiction conceit. You know, these warring alien races. Like if you didn't know that Captain Marvel was a Marvel comic book, or that Kirk, the character, came from Marvel Comics.
And a lot of the general audience don't.
No, and it's just this it's an epic science fiction film. I mean, you have somebody who was from Earth, who was altered by an alien race to be part of the Kree. The forces. The Kree forces made to be heroes, and this is, if you take the comic book away, you're just getting some great sci-fi, action adventure. I mean, one of the great things about Infinity War that I don't think gets enough credit is just what an epic film. I mean, the stakes are literally, the universe is hanging in the balance. It's not even just Earth. It's the universe, and you're going from nowhere to Titan to Earth. It's just, I mean, you're going all over the place, and this is what Lord of the Rings was doing in Middle Earth. But we're just, the fact that they come from, it's weird. There's still this prejudice against comic book movies. Like, there's some people at critical quarters are going, you know, it's not like an Oscar-winning. Infinity War shouldn't win an Oscar. But in terms of entertainment value, for my geek buck, these are geek nirvana. I mean, these movies are what I dreamed of as a child, and as an adult, they still appeal to me years later, decades later. And how great is that?
It's pretty good, but I'm telling you, I don't know that such a prejudice exists anymore. I really don't. And here's the thing. I think there's those of us in the comic book movie loving fan, we love to feel like we've got somebody holding us down. But the reality is, I don't know that that really exists anymore, because look, we're talking about when you're looking at movies like, God, let me just bring up a couple of them here. Okay, we are now living in an age, again, we're getting Oscar nominations for these films. We're talking about Black Panther get a 97% from critics. That's from the old staunchy critics.
That's true.
From the new breed of critics, from the television critics, from the newspaper critics. 97%. Wonder Woman, 93%. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, 97%. Logan, 93%. Thor Ragnarok, a 92%. Spider-Man Homecoming, 92%. The Dark Knight, 94%. Captain America Civil War, 91%. Marvel's The Avengers from 2012, 92%. The second Avengers, no, the last Avengers Infinity War, 90%. Guardians of the Galaxy, 91%. 90s.
It's true.
I do not believe, I think there are those of us who want to feel like we're the underdogs now and that we're the oppressed group. And that was true of the time. There was an anti-comic book movie bias for a time. But the data doesn't lie. These old staunch guards and all that kind of stuff, these are the people lauding the Wonder Womans,
right?
The Avengers Infinity Wars. And I think we have seen that turn. And the fact that, again, I think people lose sight of how significant, not that Suicide Squad won an Academy Award for Best hair and makeup. or yeah, I think it was hair and makeup. I think that's the Academy Award one was hair and makeup, which is great, wonderful, good for it, because it did do a remarkable job with hair and makeup in that movie. This was one of the hallowed categories, the guarded categories, the best screenplay category, and they put Logan in there. Still should have got a Best Picture nomination because it was the best movie of the year. But we see these things changing, and I think we got to start embracing that.
Well, look, I do agree with you, and I say a lot on my own. You know, when I do my little live chats on the Burn Network, I say that we live in a world now that I call the post-geek singularity. Where instead of AIs achieving sentience, which is what Ray Kurzweil talked about, the singularity happening when computers become self-aware, we now live in a world where geek culture became mainstream. It exploded into the mainstream, and what was once the characters on Big Bang Theory, they seem so retro to me now. That's a geek stereotype from 20 years ago that has been, I think, in this day and age, completely eradicated, because comic book movies have become, and not just comic book movies, and like Into the Spider-Verse is getting people who find that movie delightful that aren't necessarily predisposed to liking comic book movies. It's just a delightful movie. You know, Logan, if you're like a grizzled old guy that grew up with The Searchers, John Ford's The Searchers, you're going to go to Logan and go, man, that was a good movie. Yeah. They're not going to say that, oh, it has to come from comic book characters. I mean, the origins of these characters doesn't matter anymore. That, I think you're right. The prejudice is going away, because a lot of people think, oh, it's just, these were disposable newsprint 10-cent magazines when I was a kid growing up. The funnies. And now they're I mean, Infinity War made $2 billion.
Yep. And sure did.
And the thing is, even to me, I go see other genres of films. Like, I haven't been too happy with what happened with Star Trek on the big screen.
Right.
I wish that I see Infinity War, and that's the movie that makes me feel the way like Wrath of Khan made me feel. And I'm turning to these great fantasy epics because they're providing that entertainment joy that I felt in my younger days, but it makes me feel it now as an old man. I mean, it's great to have that. And I think Captain America, there's no reason to believe that Captain Marvel will not continue this streak of Marvel films.
And we will find out soon enough. All right. Before we move into our second topic today, just want to give you guys a little bit of announcement, let you know something. Some of you guys who watch this we're very grateful. A bunch of you guys are Patreon supporters of the John Campea YouTube channel, and that helps keeps these shows on the air. And we are really happy to announce, for those of you who are Patreon supporters, Rob and I are going to be doing a new weekly podcast called Best Things This Week, that we're going to talk about our favorite, what we thought was the best movie news stories, but other things that we really love that week outside of it. And joining us for our first episode is going to be one of our newest staff members around here, Ashley Whalen, who, if you saw the John Campea show earlier today, you saw her and met her for the first time. We're going to have her on to talk about us. And that is going to be a weekly podcast for our Patreon supporters. So if you're one of our Patreon supporters, keep your eyes open for that. First episode drops this Friday, and we're both really excited.
Can we make Ashley the best thing that happened this week?
She probably is. She is the best thing that happened to all of us this week. All right. Let's move on to a second thing here. You alluded to something that very wise men predicted would never happen, and yet it happened. Aquaman, which not only did I say would never hit $1 billion,
right?
I said it would never hit 800 million. Not just $1 billion. I said it'll never hit 800 million. Back in June, on one of the companion videos we do, I said, I see its cap, its absolute roof, around $700 million. And nary a person disagreed with me. Yet here we are. It blew past the $800 million mark and has just recently gone over $1 billion. It is now, I believe, now I have to double check this, but it's well on its way, if it's not already done it, becoming not just the highest, it was already the highest grossing DCEU movie, because no DCEU movie has ever made $1 billion. I believe it is now the highest grossing DC movie, period, including the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight films. $1 billion club. DC is finally in there.
No, we got to say the WAN Billion Club.
The James
WAN Billion
Dollar Club. It has sailed And now I don't think anybody's going to say it is the greatest movie DC has ever put out. No one's going to say, or at least it's all subjective. If you want to, that's fine. But I don't think you're going to find a lot of people that say it's as good as The Dark Knight or things like that. And that's fine. But Aquaman, look, we said a few months ago, or at least I said almost a year ago, when James Wan, first of all, I've always loved the fact that Jason Momoa is playing Aquaman. That always lost my shit over completely. But it's when they announced that James Wan was directing, because you know me, the director is the most important contributing factor to the quality of a film. That is when I went, not that it would make $1 billion, but this is going to be good. Then it could be crappy, but this could be really good. Ends up being an audience-pleasing film for one of the better received critically DCU films as well. But what was it, Robert, do you think that took Aquaman after I think it's fair to say, struggling Justice League movie to then come out 1 year later with such triumph? What were the contributing what made this happen? What brought us to this point?
I kind of have a theory about this. And a lot of our viewers don't like it when we talk about politics on this show. And I think...
And we do try to avoid it.
We do try to avoid it. But what I think the political... The divisive nature of politics in our country and all of the things that are going on in the real world. There's so many things you read about that aren't good, or they're divisive. They cause people to get angry. So many things. People are being made angry about a lot of things. You walk into Aquaman. I don't care who you are. I don't care what happened that day. You can't help but have a big smile on your face when you watch that movie. That movie, even people that sit back, it's goofy. There's that octopus playing the drums. There's people that aren't going to be into that. But I think for the most part, families were a big contributing factor. Mom and dad take their kids because they figure it's Aquaman. They go and they're pleasantly surprised, like, oh my God, this was so much fun to watch. Like, it just brought... just wacky, and I call it wacky. Aquaman to me is wacky. And I don't normally like wacky, but Aquaman's wacky in the grand fashion that wackiness comes in.
Right. In all the best ways.
In all the best ways. And I think it's like when you go, sometimes when I go to a county fair, I want that big, just cotton candy, not just a gigantic thing that I can sit and eat all day long. That's what Aquaman was. It was a giant confection at a county fair that I think a family could just chomp down on, whether it's cotton candy or a caramel apple or whatever. That's what Aquaman was, and I think it was an antidote for all the other divisiveness that's going on in the world. You go see Aquaman and you just come out with a big smile on your face. I think that true pure entertainment. You don't shake a stick at that. Because when you can get it, and I want to say something for a minute about James Wan himself. I know him a little bit. I've talked to him a number of times, and he went out on Twitter and was thanking his crew, thanking his actors, thanking the studio. He's somebody that really understands the value of the collaborative art form that cinema is. And I really think that I'd like to believe that he really set the tone and created an environment where everybody could go nuts. I mean, he reined it in. It was through his filter. But I think we got something that, gosh, I hope we get more of this in the future. I hope more filmmakers get to bring that crazy vision to the screen.
As we're also in an era, we were talking a little bit earlier about the era of the films that we're in, right? We live in an era now where we're getting some glorious cross-genre pollinating.
Yes.
Earlier today, we were talking about Captain America, The Winter Soldier, which is clearly a political thriller.
Right.
We take Ant-Man, which is a comic book movie, but also a heist film.
Right.
You take Doctor Strange, which is a comic book movie / you take Logan, which is a comic book movie / Western. You're finding this great amalgamation. But we still have a couple of movies come out that are just pure comic book movies. And I think we had two really good examples of that this year. We had Aquaman, which had unbelievable success, and we had Venom, which had completely unpredicted, unparalleled success as well. And I believe both of those movies are examples of movies that in this great cross-genre pollination age, because that shows the maturation of the genre, really, to still, every once in a while, we should keep our feet planted in just a good, pure comic book movie. And when I watch Aquaman, that's what I see. A pure, goofy, fun, colorful comic book movie. And that's what it was. And I think audiences responded to it.
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, Venom, when in the 90s, when they were putting out all those die-cut covers and reflective covers and all that,
turned so many people off
turns,
comic books.
But what was, you know, it was, Venom was kind of the equivalent of buying one of those comic books in that, the covers would be like Venom's like, rah, you know, just as crazy. That's what that movie was.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't trying to make Venom. I could see somebody trying to make a Venom movie that felt like the first Alien. Like going that serious.
And I'm sure there were some fans that were kind of hoping for something like that,
I think
right?
so. But the character of Venom has never been that way to me. It is just goofy. And when I started seeing, you know, the Venom coming across Tom Hardy's face like that, and speaking like this, you know, I'm like,
so many snacks.
I'm like, that's it, man. If they're making everybody, look, the naysayers can say what they want. 800 million, close to 900 million worldwide says otherwise. They went the right direction. Venom is goofy, fun, and like you just said, and I would add, Into the Spider-Verse is that way too, because it's very comic booky. It even uses comic book conceits like panels and things.
Stylistically, I'd agree.
Yeah,
stylistically.
but it does it in a groundbreaking, very unique and very cool way. I mean, Into the Spider-Verse is very cool, just from a visual standpoint, from a pop art standpoint. I mean, I expected Lichtenstein. They go Lichtenstein style when you see those big comic panels done with dots and all that. I mean, it was so modern and cutting edge and just artistic. Every one of those panels could have been in a magazine, like whatever art magazine you're reading now. And that's what Into the Spider-Verse was too. And it had that joy. There was that film was just full, like with Venom and like with Aquaman. I left that movie with a huge smile on my face, and it was a great story.
Yeah, great story. Very more character centric than most comic book movies, as a matter of fact. And I think that was one of the trends we saw in 2018. We saw comic book movies, and again, I think this is another sign of the maturation of the entire genre. Even some of the great comic book movies in past years have not really had a true identity to the film, you know what I mean? But when you watch a film like Aquaman, you walk out of that film with no doubt that this movie had a very clear vision of what its DNA was. This was a movie that totally understand what its makeup and what its personality was. When you watch Venom, there is no doubt the filmmakers 100% knew this is the identity of our movie, and we're going to stick to that. When you watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, clearly they had a very clear sense of what the identity of that movie was. And I think you're seeing more and more of these comic book movies do that, and that probably was one of the things that became a contributing factor. Look, somebody like me, especially when you're looking at Aquaman, it came off a really struggling Justice League. If Justice League, which should have been a $2 billion film in theory, in theory, Justice League, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg, like Aquaman, all teaming up together, this should have been a $2 billion movie. And it struggles and it struggles and it struggles. So then you look at Aquaman. See, I thought Aquaman could be good and could be the first step in rehabilitating DC's direction. But it went so far beyond that. Again, you brought in a great director, had a clear sense of its own identity. It knew what it was going for, and it presented exactly what it was to the audience through its marketing.
No doubt.
And you had a sex symbol like Jason Momoa in there, which attributes to why the majority of the audience who went to go see this movie were actually female rather than male. Hardly ever happens with comic book movies, but we're seeing that change too. And it was a big snowball, perfect storm of things that led to Aquaman becoming this incredible success.
And I also think that Aquaman turned out to be a pleasant surprise. Even for us, it turned out to be a surprise where, you know, I feel the same way kind of about Solo. Like, you and I both liked Solo.
Yeah.
Now, here was the thing. It's a Star Wars story that wasn't tied. I mean, yes, there's an Imperial presence in the film, obviously, but it wasn't about that. You know, it was this personal story between Han Solo and his girlfriend and his mentors or this, that, and the other thing. And it was not, we've seen Star Wars movies that were really about, even Rogue One is part of that galactic conflict.
Yes.
It's a side story, but Solo wasn't about that. And I think that people because they call it a Star Wars story, they wanted to see more of that. But I think that audiences, especially even Star Wars fans, might not have gone, and they expected something else. And what they got was a cool, like the Logan version of a Star Wars movie. It wasn't as good as Logan.
Great space adventure.
That's what it was. And to me, I didn't have that expectation about it being tied to the greater conflict between the Empire and the rebellion. I just looked at it for what it was. I had no preconceived notions. I had a really good time with it. And even Solo, I would say, I mean, I know we call the show the Weekly Hero, but Han Solo's been a weekly hero of mine, you know, for my whole life since I was like, what, 10? And I liked that too. And I don't even think that movie gets enough credit. That I would put into, I think that movie was a win, not box office wise, of course.
Definitely not box office.
But it was a win for my enjoyment as a moviegoer.
Sure.
And I want to see more of that. You know, and I think we're really getting, you know, as television has gotten better, the movies have had to get better.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this is, and we are living in this time, the post-geek singularity, where it's just getting better and better.
Well, we're going to talk about a little bit of television at some point here too, but let's move on to this. A big thing happened, and we've talked about this on the John Campea show a bit the last couple of days, but a big surprise. Trailer hit. Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, we all knew that Spider-Man Far From Home trailers would hit before Endgame came out in theaters, because they're not going to wait 7 weeks before the movie comes out to launch those things. Trailer drops. We've talked about look, we both loved it. We both loved the trailer. We thought it was great. Some of the really interesting things in this trailer. One, my suspicion over the whole passport, that not only does it not have the expiration date and the issue date of his passport, it also blanked out his birth year. When you go back and look at, that image again, when it shows his passport, they've CGI'd out the birth year. They CGI'd out the date of issue. They CGI'd out the expiration date. They CGI'd out his date of birth. So is this actually the year 3125 in an alternate dimension? I'm not suggesting that it is. I'm just saying. So we saw those. We saw Mysterio. The fishbowl helmet. We were wondering, are we going to see the fishbowl helmet? It's there. Is he actually going to have magical abilities? Kind of looked to me like maybe he does. Looks like we got a little bit of a story. He's pulling a bit of a syndrome from Incredibles, where he's trying to make himself look like he's a hero when really he's something else. We don't know that that's actually the case, but that's what it kind of looks like to me. There are a lot of things that really stood out to me in this trailer. I thought it was a trailer of great moments that you don't generally get in first trailers anymore. But now, you know, it's been 24 hours since the trailer first came out. What are some things now that you've had a chance to marinate on this first Spider-Man Far From Home trailer that really stand out to you as significant? Well,
here's the thing. You know, Homecoming clearly sets up a timeline for Peter Parker, and that he's in high school.
Yes.
You know, and high school is a 4-year. If you start as a freshman, I went to junior high, so I started as a sophomore. And then there's 2 years between Homecoming and Far From Home. So if he wasn't a freshman, so by putting in a date on his passport, then you're like going, okay, well, when does Infinity War take place in his high school career? I've been thinking a lot about this because you were the first person to bring the passport thing to my attention. So I'm thinking like, okay, if they were to lock you into a timeline, would the rest of the MCU timeline, because, you know, fans have been bananas over this for a while. When does all this stuff take place? So I think that's a smart move. Maybe they'll reconcile that later. But what I really like the most is, after all of this, the Krees and the Skrulls and Infinity War and Thanos, the world being destroyed, I love the fact that this Spider-Man story is concentrating on Peter Parker is taking a trip with his friends. The world is not ending. And yet, it's the stakes are personal. It's what's going to happen to him and what's going to happen to his friends on this European vacation. You can make a Marvel movie, and same with Ant-Man and the Wasp, that the world's doesn't have to come to an end. It's not some apocalyptic story where, oh my God, the fate of the planet Earth is at stake. You can still make a really compelling, really fun, really entertaining superhero movie with one guy and his friends. One guy that happens to be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
I've talked about this on the show before, and I believe you've absolutely nailed it. The key, I believe, to Marvel's longevity, not up till now, I mean moving forward, is, aside from quality of film, because you've got to consistently build quality or else it doesn't matter. Assuming they're always going to have quality in their films, the key to their longevity, I have been saying for a long time now, is you have got to change gears now and again. It cannot always be about save the world, save the world, save the universe, save the world, save the universe, save the world. You've got to change gears. Because remember, there were times when the big movies that came out was about saving the neighborhood.
Right.
Or it was about saving, in a lot of teen comedies, about saving the community center.
Right.
Saving the girl, saving the family, you know, whatever that was. And what they showed, what Marvel showed us with Ant-Man, was that they knew they needed to change his gears. We can't always fight Galactus or Thanos or whatever this next big global threat is.
Right.
We've got to change gears, and they throw in a heist movie, right? And I love that the way you articulated that is that Spider-Man Far From Home, and first of all, Spider-Man Homecoming did that for us as well.
Absolutely.
It changed gears. Now we're coming into this again. We've just gone from Thanos wiping out the universe to Buddy trying to save his summer vacation.
Right.
And that's brilliant, because if you don't do that, you get law of diminishing returns. And it's ho-hum, the next big galactic threat is coming. And that's going to get stale. By changing it up, you keep it fresh, you keep the audience on their toes, and it gives you a sense of variety in the types of movies you're getting.
Another thing that I really loved about the trailer was it was so great to see Venice.
Yeah,
they're in Venice. You know, they're the canals of Venice, Italy. I mean, they are on location. One of the things I think the Marvel movies, like you know, you'll see a chase, like they went to South Korea in Black Panther, and you saw a little bit of that. But these have not been. I love globe-trotting movies, you know, and I loved, was it in Ultron where you see that there's the establishing shot of the, I guess it's in Africa or whatever, but they have all the rotting ships, the oil tankers on the shoreline.
That was Ultron, yeah.
Yeah, and just seeing that, like places you don't get to see, and there isn't a lot of that. And I want to see more globe-trotting in these movies, and let's go to different places in the world. I mean, I think that's really cool, and to see it's broad daylight, it's in Venice. They weren't just shooting in green screen in Atlanta. They had to have gone to Venice to get those shots. Yeah. And I'm like, that's really cool. Like, what a great class trip, or you go with your friends to Europe, and like, that's something new. Just that. I mean, I love that Ant-Man and the Wasp is in San Francisco. You know, you get to see a little bit of the city. It's cool. It's not just New York.
And by the way, Spider-Man Far From Home, while I'm usually betting against movies hitting the $1 billion club, I do think Spider-Man Far From Home will join the $1 billion club. And look, when you look at the first one, made close to $900 million. The first one got close to $900 million. Critics loved it. Audiences loved it. It's going to be coming hot off the heels of Endgame. And Spider-Man is going to be in Endgame, so he's going to have that momentum going for him.
Is he?
Too. Well, that's what they say. They say he's going to be there. I just got to believe they can make up that 100 million more, and I got to believe it's going to. If not, it's going to come really damn close. But I believe that's going to be the next one.
I'm in complete agreement. Although, I think our dark horse, or our blonde horse, is Captain Marvel.
Yeah, and that's where we got to keep a real close eye on that.
By the way, I didn't mean to call Brie Larson or Captain Marvel. I didn't mean to call her a horse. I mean that as a euphemism.
I think we understood.
As a dark horse
don't
candidate.
Worry. I think we got what you're saying. All right, let's get on to our final topic this week. This was almost like a little bit of an afterthought, as a matter of fact. As you guys know, X-Force, as something that Fox has been looking at making, they announced that we're going to do this and we're going to do that with X-Force. But the clock's been ticking between now and the merger. Fox has still been operating business as usual, making their movies, but there is a timeline.
Right.
It's been reported that basically Fox had 2 months to get an X-Force into production. And if they could not get X-Force into active production, then there was no way it was going to happen because the merger was coming. Well, the creator of X-Force, Rob Liefeld, got on Twitter and basically said, pouring out a drink for X-Force. It would have been an $800 million movie easily, so X-Force is dead. And buried within that story was also the notion that Gambit is now pretty much officially done. This one that they've been trying to get going for a long time, which ever since announcing Channing Tatum was going to play the role, it had a rotating carousel of directors come and go. It became a little bit of a mess, and it looks like that is officially done. X-Force is done. Your thoughts on this whole thing about these projects being pretty much off the table now?
Well, you know, I think it was inevitable.
Right.
I think with the Fox-Disney merger, now that it's going through, there is no way that I thought they were ever going to put another. I really believe that they were never going to put another title, another mutant title, certainly another MCU or any Marvel title into production after New Mutants and Dark Phoenix. There's just no way they could. I think you know, Once Upon a Deadpool was a very unique way to get a little bit of more value out of that. Now they have 2 different versions of Deadpool, so there's really 3 Deadpool movies. Hopefully those reshoots on New Mutants, who knows where that is. I hope the movie isn't scrapped totally. I really would love to see. I'd love to see New Mutants, and I'm really pulling for Dark Phoenix. I mean, I really like seeing Fassbender's Magneto. I really like seeing James McAvoy's Professor X. I like those characters. I want to see what Sophie Turner can do when she's unleashed as Phoenix. And I want it to be good.
I wasn't huge on Sophie Turner in Apocalypse.
I know.
Was not huge on her in that.
I know. I think that, you know, hopefully it's going to be great. But I think this was an inevitability. And it didn't surprise me that an X-Force movie is not getting made. And maybe we'll never see a Deadpool 3 either. Because, you know, I've heard, people have said, I haven't heard this confirmed, but everyone's saying that Disney Plus is only going to be PG and above and not MA or whatever. I don't see how Disney, they might have to have a separate streaming service of some kind.
Well, they have one. It's called Hulu.
Well, that's true. Then they're going to put, however they're going to do that, it's going to be the Fox, like where are they going to put the French Connection? Where are they going to put Alien? You know, where are they going to put the Predator franchise? Where's Die Hard going to go? You know, so they're getting in all these movies, and perhaps maybe that's what they'll do. They'll continue to make. But I can't imagine the same reason they got James Gunn, they got rid of James Gunn, is the same reason they can't make a Deadpool movie. Like, if you look and see some of the jokes in those films, I mean,
absolutely.
I mean, it's like I can't see a new Deadpool movie being made under the umbrella of Disney, at least not like the first 2 movies that we've seen, because parents would go bananas if they started really looking at, you know, my daughter wanted to know what's celebrating International Women's Day. What were they doing there? I don't understand that from the first Deadpool movie.
God,
I mean,
that oh my God, that was so funny in the first film.
It was so funny, and it's like, well, once those jokes start being analyzed, I don't know. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but it doesn't surprise me ultimately.
You know, and that's, I wanted to go there with that. I wanted to go with, okay, now, Gambit, I've already on record, I'm a little bit disappointed the Gambit's not happening.
Me too. I love that character.
I was looking forward to it. I didn't think it was going to be the next great comic book movie, but I was looking forward to it. The X-Force thing, a little bit of a bummer. But it does bring us to Deadpool. Because, look, Bob Iger, High Lord and Emperor of all things Disney.
One of my heroes.
The one that Kevin Feige genuflexed to.
Right.
The great Bob Iger. He was asked early after news came out that this merger may be happening. And one of the very first questions posed to him was Deadpool, because Deadpool's in the midst of some great success, blah, blah, blah. Bob Iger gave a lot of us a lot of hope by saying things like, I think there could be room for R-rated material in our MCU. I think there could be room for R-rated material. As time has gone on and we've heard more and more, I don't think he meant it. I don't think he meant it. I don't think Bob Iger has any intention of letting any R-rated material come into the MCU. Now, you can make a very good argument that we're seeing bigger success with R-rated comic book stuff, whereas before, you went decades before you could find good R. A lot of the R-rated comic book stuff was terrible. They've been making some good R-rated stuff. Logan especially is one of them. But it's not just about having individual success. Bob Iger, the reason he's so successful is he always looks at not the big picture, but at the big picture.
Right.
And to him, the MCU is just too valuable of a commodity to threaten or to put at risk. And I don't think you're ever going to see Bob Iger. I'm going to tell you what right now. I hope I'm wrong. I have no insider information telling me this. Is just me as a fan speculating. I think we have seen our last of Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. And God, I hope I'm wrong. But I just do not see Bob Iger greenlighting that sort of a tonal shift with their programming. And if we do, it won't be in the MCU.
No, look, I completely agree with you. How do you... Now think about it. There's Marvel characters. There's going to be Marvel Land at Disneyland, at Disney World. If you watch Deadpool, how do you at all acknowledge Deadpool exists and you have an 8-year-old who rents Deadpool 2 or who watches Deadpool 2 when that movie begins with Deadpool eviscerating many, many, many people? I mean, just slicing and dicing them, and the kind of jokes. How do you reconcile that with your childhood audience that Disney has been cultivating for almost a century? You can't.
You're going to hire actors, like they hire them to dress up as Disney princesses, dress up as Deadpool. Hey, little Billy, if you don't mind, I'm going to take your mom behind the curtain for a few minutes.
Yeah,
like,
you can't. Although what's really interesting to me is Disney in the 80s and the little bit of the 90s had Hollywood Pictures, where they did movies like Martin Scorsese did The Color of Money with Tom Cruise. They did Ruthless People, one of my favorite comedies. They did a lot of R-rated films under their Hollywood Pictures banner. And they kind of have disavowed those movies. They're not putting them out on video. They're licensing those films out to like Kino Lorber, who are putting those out. Color of Night, which came out under Hollywood Pictures. That's on Kino Lorber. That's Disney. They're like, we might have made those one time, but man, we don't have those movies anymore. Someone else can license that out. Right. And I think that I don't know what. That's why the Fox library, they're getting a lot of those big franchise titles in the Fox library are R-rated pictures. Die Hard, Alien, those kind of things. What are they going to do with those? Are they going to make PG Predator movies? PG Die Hard? You can't say yippee-ki-yay.
Remember, we've already got one PG. We have a PG-13 Die Hard.
Well, and there's also PG-13 Alien versus Predator too.
I forgot that. Was that PG-13?
I think maybe I might be wrong about that. I mean, but I mean, it's very weird because half of the Fox library. So how is Disney going to deal with that? I'm fascinated by whatever they're going to do because the Disney brand, they simply cannot bring a Deadpool into the fold because then parents are going to be like, because what do you do with a new generation of parents that don't know what that movie is, or in 10 years, when Deadpool's part of pop culture history and somebody brings home Deadpool because it's part of the Disney MCU and then their 8-year-olds watching it, that ain't going to fly.
The only way you can do it, is by not including him in the MCU.
Right.
It's the only way. And look, I've been saying from day one, look, one of the reasons I didn't want, look, I love Marvel. I love what they've done with the MCU. I do, but I've been very vocal about this since the beginning. I did not want Disney getting their hands on the X-Men franchise because I like the diversity of the different. Look, because I've said before, we never in our lives, ever, had Fox not had the X-Men characters, we would never have Deadpool. We never would have had Deadpool 2. We never would have had Logan. We never would have had these films, right? Like, at all. No way.
Even Days of Future Past.
Yeah,
which is a movie where the movie opens with all of the X-Men being slaughtered.
Yeah, it's not something they would have done. The only way I could see Deadpool surviving this is if Marvel did what they will absolutely not do, but I'll keep my fingers crossed, but they're never going to do it, which is bring the X-Men over and create a separate cinematic universe for them. And let different storytellers and different filmmakers continue to make those stories separate from the MCU.
Yeah.
Let them have different feels and different tones and different DNA from the MCU, but that's not going to happen. Disney ain't going to do that. And since they're not going to do that, I just don't see a way that Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool, which, oh my God, this guy was born to play this role, I just don't see how it's going to survive that merger.
I think the only thing that they can do, and I'm waiting, and this is my theory, is that they're going to continue 20th Century Fox as a viable brand. People who know will know that, okay, Fox is a Disney-held company. But if they continue with that 20th Century Fox company and keep it going, and they don't even say on the front it's a Disney company, like the Warner Brothers logo says AOL, or now it's what is it, AT&T company.
Well, Universal says a Comcast company.
Yeah, Comcast company. They'll say something like that. But if they keep the 20th Century Fox brand, which I think they should, because I've always wanted to make a movie in my life with that 20th Century Fox logo in front of it. If they do that, then they can continue to make these movies. Because
which was part of the reason when the bidding war was going on between Disney and Comcast for Fox. I'm not going to look, I love Disney, I do, but I was cheering for Comcast to win that because Comcast let their intentions be known. We're not going to chop shop Fox up.
Right.
We want to buy Fox and we want to keep it together as its own independent company to run and operate, which meant X-Men, Logan, Deadpool, all could have continued operating under that system.
Yeah.
But I think Disney's made it very clear they're chop shopping this thing up. They're stripping it for parts.
Well, I don't know because they're bringing over Fox 2000. Pardon me, Fox Searchlight. Yeah, like Nancy Utley, who's been there for a long time, and they've got a great team because Fox Searchlight there's a lot of Academy Award nominations that have come out of there.
Yes, there are.
A lot of great films. A lot of
prestige films.
A lot of prestige films, and Disney wants that taste. They want that too. I mean, who wouldn't want to have Oscar bait caliber films with those filmmakers that they already have? Those executives already have relationships that Disney would never have had with certain kinds of filmmakers and certain kinds of movies. Now that's underneath their umbrella. And if they keep Fox, if they keep the Fox logo alive, if they keep, whether it's Fox Searchlight, whether it's Fox proper, then they can get away with making these movies.
So you're saying there may be hope.
I think there is. I think there's hope.
You're right, man. I hope you're right.
I think it's the only way to go.
All right, guys. That will do it. The ink's now dry, and we've turned the final page of this edition of the Weekly Hero. Thank you so much. Now, you may have noticed we did not do our tradition of a hot toy thing today. It is like there's a very, very small window of a rainy season in LA. It's a very small window, but we are in the midst of it, and it makes it very difficult for you to transport that stuff.
Yes, I don't want
when you're taking the train to get into Hollywood, it's hard to lug those things around.
I don't want them to get wet.
Yeah, don't want them to get wet and ruin the boxes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But don't you worry, we're going to have some hot toy action here next week on the next edition.
Oh, and there's new hot toys. There's all new. The hot toys that are coming out this year. Ooh,
there's
tasty.
Some good ones. There's some really good ones that we're all excited about. All right. I want to thank, of course, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM, find me on Instagram at RMBurnett, or find me on my YouTube channel, The Burnettwork, or at my website, theburnettwork.net. The Burnettwork is one word on my website.
You guys can simply follow me on Twitter at John Campea. But by the way, same handle is where you can follow me on Instagram. And I'm actually going to start using Instagram a lot more. I'm actually preferring Instagram these days over Twitter.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm just starting to prefer it a little bit more over Twitter. So you can find me both on Twitter and on Instagram, just at John Campea. Make sure you follow me there. Special thanks and shout out to fact checker Jonathan and Ray for getting this show put together. And thank you to you guys for being our regular readers. And we're so glad that you come along for the ride. Don't forget, we'll be back again next week for the Weekly Hero. And also, for those of you who are Patreon supporters, keep your eyes open. The first podcast of Mine and Rob's is going to be this Friday, and we hope you enjoy it. That'll do it for us, guys. My name's John Campea, and until the next episode, bye-bye.